So let's get started here, learning a little bit more about Varjo Base. And a great way to start is actually where you download Varjo Base from on our website. We're starting here at varjo.com. And if you actually go under the support tab in getting started, you'll be taken to information about system requirements, setting up your subscription, configuring your headset, and then actually downloads here at the bottom, and Varjo Base. You need to have an account in order to log in to download the Varjo Base software. And at this point, you can download the latest version of Varjo Base software. There's also times when you may want to evaluate previous versions of Varjo Base software, especially in some of the development related to Unity or Unreal, with regards to what version of the SDKs you may be testing at the time. But in our case, we're going to run version 3.2.0, which was released earlier in July. And fortunately, I've already installed it, so we can skip right into Varjo Base. Now, initially, you'll be presented with the login information using the same credentials that you had from the website. Once you've logged in, if you have a headset already connected, you'll notice it'll tell you what type. Now, actually, my headset is connected to this computer, but I do not have it powered on. So I wanted to start this webinar at least showing some things that you can do without an active headset connected to your computer, or in my case, one that's not powered on yet. There's a number of tabs that are showing you various bits of information. I'm not going to go into too much detail as all this information is accessible through our website. You can always check to see what version of Varjo Base is running on the support tab. And when the headset is connected, some of the relevant information that will pop up will be the serial numbers and the versions of the firmware that is installed on the device. Varjo Base can manage the firmware updates as well as updating itself. And so it's always handy to allow and leaving the automatic check in place. Some environments do not have this permission, they may be locked down, and so these functions would be disabled. It's also a great place if you ever run into problems with your headset or with the applications running in the headset. Our support staff will often refer you to the support tab to run a diagnostics test and gather the logs for transmission to our support group. You can also jump to the Varjo support link through opening this button here. In the System tab, you'll have a couple of options. One of the interesting ones is the headset tracking, which by default, we are recognizing the Steam VR lighthouses. There's also options for the beta version of the Varjo Inside Eye tracking, as well as any other third-party tracking solutions that may have been set up. We are fairly tracking agnostic, and so various tracking vendors will add support by connecting to our tracking API, which is also available through the download site. You can invoke Steam configuration, get the room set up, pair additional devices. When the headset's active, you can also override, instead of going through the Steam Center location, you can override the calibration and height by changing the values right here. We have the ability to interface with OpenVR compatible software, and you can leave this enabled. You can also recognize OpenXR compatible software and change the render resolutions based on the application needs as well as your system performance hardware. Workspace is an area that we'll get to here in another portion of this webinar, so I'm going to skip this for now. There are times when, especially in this case, while I'm doing presentations, I may not want messages to appear inside of a headset that normally would be displayed from Varjo Base. So I've actually disabled that in this case. There are two buttons on the headset. You can disable those buttons. However, we're going to be using those, especially when it comes to the workspace portion of this webinar. Eye tracking instructions are handy, and for any reason you don't want to show this information. Again, if you're potentially recording a video directly from the headset, then you may want to disable some of the things that by default will show up. And you can also optimize performance by shutting down certain processes that are not in use by your virtual reality application. When we get to the headset itself, one of the very powerful features of the Varjo system and all Varjo headsets is the automatic IPD adjustment, or the interpupillary distance. Pupillary distance. Say that 20 times really fast. This is one of the things that it's often overlooked, but is so critical when it comes to the comfort and usability of virtual reality headsets. If a headset does not have the proper eye configuration, the lens configuration to the distances between your pupils, it may become blurry, it may be uncomfortable, and the end user will not have a positive experience because they're not focusing, the eyes are not actually focusing on the content correctly. We have another section of additional optimizations that, depending upon your application, you may or may not enable. You may change, based on performance, based on the needs, and based on the visual fidelity of what you're trying to achieve. We'll do a little bit of hand tracking here during Varjo Workspace as well, but ultra-leap hand tracking is enabled, in this case, for any applications that support the hand interactions. And again, if there's mixed reality applications and you're potentially reading and using the light level in the room and you're noticing that things are a little bit too bright, right now in this environment, we have a fairly subtle low lux level, so we don't need to really adjust our video brightness. But if we had a very bright room in the middle of the day, then we potentially could lower the video brightness of the video feed coming into the headsets, and that will make the experience that much better. One last area that we'll probably refer to quite a bit is this developer tool over here called the analytics window. The analytics window is a way to actually simulate a version of the headset without connecting a headset. And by default, we have this little fly-up menu here. We can simulate a number of different types of our headsets between the VR and the XR model. And we can also simulate the video pass-through. And if we don't have a camera connected, we can still have a texture that really notifies the application, shows us in the application view that we're actually processing the potential video stream, and what we would be seeing while wearing a headset would be the mixed reality pass-through. But this is an extremely powerful feature if we want to get started our mixed reality development right now without any other changes, as in plugging in hardware. We can also get some performance information about applications that are running. We can check their foveated rendering and see where that's performing. It's not moving right now because my eyes are actually not connected to it. And we can double check our depth buffer. Nothing's rendering at the moment, so we're not going to see much in the depth. And very handy screen recordings and screenshots. These will, by default, send images and videos to the Windows document location for your pictures and your video folder. Should be under your username, and there'll be a subdirectory called Varjo where that information will be dropped. I will actually be using the screen recording during the workspace section of this webinar to record what I'm looking at in the headset. Since doing a screen capture in that case, you won't see me, you want to see what's going on in the headset. We have left eye, right eye, peripheral, and focus views, which I'm by default going to be using just the left eye peripheral rather than giving you the crazy buggy eyes for recordings. So let's take a look at one of the things we can do now that we've learned a little bit about the analytics window. And again, without having a headset enabled, I'd like to see one of my example projects I've been working on in Unity. I'd like to take advantage of testing the mixed reality pass-through cameras before I activate both the headset as well as another application that I'll be layering on top of it in Workspace. So I'll go ahead and switch out, get all Doc Brown as our background here. And if I load up my Unity application, I have just a simple view with the camera, and I'm looking out into a background. I want to make some modifications to the exploring and see how some of the changes will show up when I'm looking at it in mixed reality. I can go ahead and get some preview work done by checking and seeing if my Unity project is set up for Varjo. We are enabled for Varjo, and we're currently not rendering to block mixed reality. So with Unity actively connected to the Varjo XR plugin for Unity, I can simply enter play mode, switch over to the analytics window, and I'll be able to see my content with the mixed reality simulated background, the camera of good old Doc Brown up there. And in Unity, I can, while this is still running, pop back over and make some changes to test various types of materials that might be of interest. Go back, preview the change. I can simulate the headset moving by selecting this mouse and WASD control. That'll actually move me around in the scene. Now this is all very handy, so I know I've actually configured my Unity camera correctly, such that the background camera setting with regards to how you tell our compositor from Unity how to render some things where the mixed reality pass-through will replace whatever content Unity is trying to generate. So the solid color with the alpha set to 0 and HDR turned off will basically tell our compositor, wherever that happens, let's go ahead and throw the camera content. So that's great. That works extremely well. So we can go ahead and close this down, stop running, reverts back since I made changes. I can go ahead and test a couple of other options, load them back up, go back to the analytics window, Varjo Workspace running over there. Now scroll around, and there's yet another background. So we're in a great place here. This has already given me confidence that I've set up my project correctly. I've tested one of my Unity applications to ensure that, yes, my position is correct. My camera, where I want mixed reality content to come through, is working, and my virtual content looks great so far. I can also take a look and see, am I setting depth buffer correctly, which yes, I am. And our performance looks very good, solid 90. So for part 2 of our webinar, we're going to switch over to our workspace view. Welcome to Workspace. I'm actually speaking to you right now from within the headset, looking at my virtual desktop, the Windows desktop with a number of various applications that I had active. In addition to having a very large amount of working space to peruse various production software development, one of the handiest features I've found I actually use this for is when you look down, you actually see a real world pass-through with your keyboard, which I'm not a hunt and pecker anymore. I can see where my mouse and keyboard, but what I found to be extremely useful is where my coffee is, so I don't knock it over. Great to get out of the way, shift it over there, and I also have my phone easily accessible if I need it. So you can enable Workspace to run in this grid background mode as you're going through. I might be going in, changing some numbers on my handy dandy project planner here, or I might be working on a Word document. I may be viewing GitHub, driving the latest and greatest Unreal Engine. I might even want to be loading up some music. The great thing is I'm sitting in the headset and I'm working without having to remove it. Hey, good choice. All right. Now, if I'd like to go and enable my workspace to show the real world, I simply go back to the Workspace tab, change my virtual background to the real world, and now I have my workspace
in addition to a seamless merge with what's going on in the real world around me. So there's my coffee, my phone, keyboard, mouse. Let's continue on and take another look at those Unity projects I've been speaking about. We did our first test actually inside of Varjo Base, and now that we have our headset on, we can look and see how our background plane that we were experimenting with shows up now that we're actually running the headset. So no additional changes, we'll leave it exactly as it was when we had our first demonstration. If we play it now, while we're wearing the headset, well, there's our nice base terrain that we were working with. I can still go in and make modifications while I'm in the headset in Workspace and change the ground, have it show up in real time. And get a better sense, in this case, of what it actually will present while someone is wearing a VR headset. There we go. And of course, when we exit Unity, we will revert back to our original changes. The other thing I can tell Workspace is as we are running, we'll use the application that's running as our virtual desktop. So we'll keep this one going. We'll run Unity again. And this time, we will switch over to a second project, which has a couple of objects that will appear based on some script that I've added and a simple marker tracking system that basically will attach markers with matching 3D objects. So no additional changes, let's just launch it. And this is a layered application, so it should appear on top of the existing program that's already running. And I have a cube which matches the position of this marker number 300. Set it down, and I'm grabbing a second marker I have over here. And there's my second marker. We'll put it over here after me. There you go. Now, one thing I have happening, I've written both of these programs independent of each other, and that's fine. And actually, the end result is I have 3D objects that are moving based on markers, and I might be making modifications to that second program to test some different pieces of furniture that I may want to drop on the ground. But I've got this annoying test grid, which I don't really want to appear. It's great when I'm working in the Unity editor. I have a point of reference, a ground plane, but maybe you want to turn that off when the application runs. Well, in the over-engineer approach, we could certainly just make it easy and enable and disable this, but I'm lazy. I don't want to remember to do that every time I launch the program. So I'm actually going to write a little script, and I'd like to do this just quickly so I'm not having to swap in and out of my headset, but I'm in Workspace, so I can go and I will say, let's make this script disabled on launch. And if I double click on my new script, I'm going to have Visual Studio pop up. Still working inside the headset. Very handy. For those who are familiar with the idea of context switching, I'm swapping in and out of virtual reality, pulling the headset off, making some changes to script, putting the headset back on. Those little back and forth methods, they really add up. But right now, I really don't need to do anything special except work as I normally would. So I'm going to have my game object to deactivate itself. And this function, this method is attached to any of my game objects. And my ground plane, I'm going to simply attach that new script I just wrote so that now when we launch, when it's in play mode, I shouldn't see that background grid, and I simply have my 3D objects. Okay, great. You're still working. Perfect. I stop playing, swap back over, and there's my grid again. So I might want to go in and while I'm running, I may want to evaluate a couple of different objects, see how they look in 3D. Maybe I'll go in and take a look at some other assets I have in here. Oh, here's a cool diving helmet. Well, there it is. Yeah, maybe I want to make a little display. Great way to do just visual inspection of objects. And it's interesting, when I'm developing applications in Unity, looking at it on a 2D screen, you never fully get the actual impact of what it will be in 3D until you're able to examine it. So in addition to being able to move around, I'm able to reorient and shift it because of the attachment I've made to my marker. Very handy. I could do multiple iterations, I could test other objects, and I could ultimately package and ship this and provide it to whoever I'm working on my application for. So again, great power of Workspace, being able to mix real and virtual, having multiple applications running simultaneously, the comfort and convenience of my tool set running in Windows, and being able to quickly switch between these without having to remove my headset. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you found this webinar useful in learning more about Varjo Base and Workspace.